Hello everyone. In the previous video lectures, we saw the two major forms of Vakroktis, namely varnavinyasa vakratā and padapūrvarddha-vakratā. In this class, we are going to see the third variety, which is Padaparārddha-vakratā. Padaparārddha-vakratā has 6 subdivisions, viz. Kala-vakratā, Karaka-vakratā, Samkhya or Vachana-vakratā, Purusha-vakratā, Upagraha-vakratā, and finally Pratyaya-vakratā. First, let's take a look at Kala-vakratā. What is Kala-vakratā? According to Kundaka, if there is a remarkable beauty due to the utmost propriety of time described, it is called Kala-vakratā. By time, here Kundaka means tense. This is Vakratā achieved through the employment of the correct use of tense. Kundaka says that when the subject and the propriety of time become closely knit, it results in excessive poetic charm. The following is an example of Kala-vakratā that Kundaka refers to. Ups and downs in the roads will be levelled. Journeys everywhere become slow and slower still. Before long, they will exceed the reach, even of one's mind's chariot. This is a statement made by a lover who is suffering from the pang of separation from his wife. He is already suffering from the pang of separation from his beloved. He is afraid of the impending monsoon season, which he thinks will further add to his woe. He says that due to the reign of his suffering from his separation from the beloved, his mind will be so cluttered that no thoughts will ever be able to travel through it properly. According to Kundaka, the use of the future tense adds to the charm of poetic expression here. Kundaka talks in detail about this passage. He says, this is a statement by a vexed lover who is already suffering the pangs of separation from his beloved, and who anticipates the time yet to come in his mind with all its associated deductions, and thus becomes exposed to the upsurge of his pent-up longings because of this kindling stimulus, and unable to bear the impact bewitching beauty of such a nature clad in splendor. He becomes a victim of overwhelming apprehension. He mourns before long the roads will become inaccessible even to the flight of thoughts. The future termination here is indeed expressive of unique beauty in the latter part of the word. The next variety of Vakratā that Kundaka cites under Padaparārddha-vakratā is Karaka-vakratā. What is Karaka-vakratā? Karaka-vakratā is the form of Vakratā where the main agent is presented insignificant and the auxiliary agent is presented as significant. According to Kundaka, this form of Vakratā involves a reversal in the status of the instruments described. Kundaka now addresses the question if there is any procedure for this. He says, the reply is that there is the procedure superimposing thatness on these. That stands for the primary action, and thatness is its nature, which is imposed adroitly by the poet on the really subordinate instruments. Kundaka then asks, what status has to be assigned then to the primary one? The answer is that it may be assigned a subordinate status. What is the purpose served by all this? The purpose served by this is the endowment of a fresh shade of beauty to poetic expression. That is to say, unique and novel originality in poetic style is brought about. The following is an example of Karaka-vakratā that Kundaka cites. The Ikshvakus have never been trained in anything like beggary, which delights in humiliating oneself. Has anyone ever known as instance of a scion of Raghus raising his faded hands in abject supplication? Yet All this has been done, but the ocean shows no consideration at all. There is no other go left now. Hence, my hand rushes all of a sudden to wield the bow. Here, the Karaka Vakratā is in the word my hand. Here the poet should have ideally said, I all of a sudden took the bow with my hand, since the hand cannot indulge in a conscious action on its own. But here, the main agent is presented insignificant, and the auxiliary agent, which is the hand, is presented as significant. Kundaka says, here, what the speaker intends to say is this: I should like to take up the bow in my hand. The hand is only a means, but conscious agency has been superimposed on this means or instrument, thereby revealing an ineffable beauty. Let's take a look at one more example. But my sword is too shy to enter into a contest with your axe. Only a person can become shy, because shyness is a quality that we find only in a conscious entity. A person can be shy to enter into a contest with someone. Two inanimate objects, however, cannot do this. But instead of bringing the real agents to the forefront, here the action is superimposed upon two other entities that are inanimate. Now, let's take a look at the third variety, which is called Samkhya or Vachana Vakratā. Sankhya Vakratā or Vachana Vakratā supports the grammatical rules concerning the category of number in Sanskrit. Kundaka says, the poets who are very particular about making their composition poetically different transpose numbers. Then we have what is known as Samkhya Vakratā or Vachana Vakratā. This is the purport of the sentence. Wherever we need singular or plural form, another number is used, or different numbers are used in the same case relation for the sake of poetic charm. In other words, if the conventional grammatical rule demands the use of a singular form, the poet would use either a dual or plural form. If a plural form is necessary, the poet would choose either a dual form or singular form. The following is a case in point. Her eyes, Nayane, are huge thickets, Kananani, of full-bloomed Kuvala blossoms, and ponds of water lilies, Saroja Karaha, make her hands Pani. The term Nayane in the given context is grammatically a dual form, because we mentioned two eyes here. Here, the lady's two eyes, Nayane, are compared to huge thickets, Kanana. According to the grammatical conventions governing number in Sanskrit, the word signifying eye being the dual form, the thickets to which the eyes are compared should also be dual. That is to say, the poet should ideally use the dual form of the word Kanana, which is Kanane, but the author in this specific context uses the plural form of the word, that is Kananani, thus consciously flouting the rules of grammar in Sanskrit language. Similarly, in the second line, Pani, meaning two hands, is grammatically a dual form. Two hands, Pani, being compared to the ponds of water lilies, Saroja Karaha, the number of ponds should be dual, that is Sarojana Kare. But in the given verse, the grammatical rule is not followed. Instead, the plural form Sarojana Karaha is employed in place of the dual Sarojana Kare. The next variety of Padaparārddha-vakratā that we are going to see is Purusha Vakratā. Kundaka says, when in poetry, the first person and the other persons are interchangeably used so as to achieve artistic excellence, we have deviant use of persons or Purusha Vakratā. As an example of Purusha Vakratā, Kundaka quotes the following words from Tapasa Vatsaraja, which depicts the minister Gaudanarayana's advice to Vasavadatta. I know that our Kaushambi is conquered by enemies and our undiplomatic king is weak. Women's hearts always pain at the parting of their dear ones. I don't mean to talk about it now. Now, Devi, you may please know what you need to do next. Janatu Devi Swayam. According to Sanskrit grammar, the subject of the last sentence is you, which is Madhyama Purusha Ekavachana or second person singular. The Thadu Rupa or the base form of the verb used here is Nya, which means to know. And the tense that is employed here is Lot Lagar or the present imperative tense. If we go by the rules of Sanskrit grammar, when the subject is second person singular in Lot Lagar, the sentence should be Janihi Devi Swayam. But in the given example, the poet consciously subverts this rule and says Janadu Devi Swayam. Here, the grammatical rule underlying Lot Lagar Prathama Purusha Ekavachana or the present imperative tense first person singular is imposed upon Lot Lagar Madhyama Purusha Ekavachana or the present imperative tense second person singular. Now, the next variety under consideration is Upagraha Vakratā. Kundaka defines Upagraha Vakratā in the following words. When both Atmane and Parasmaipada affixes are possible for a root, if a poet is seen preferring the one as against the other because of an aesthetic purpose, it is called Upagraha Vakratā. In other words, when either Parasmaipada or Atmane Pada verb affixes could be grammatically used in a context, poets are seen restricting themselves to the use of the one alone in preference to the other. This will result in Upagraha Vakratā. Sanskrit has two different sets of verb endings, Parasmaipada endings and Atmanepada endings. Some roots use only Parasmaipada endings, some roots use only Atmanapada endings, and some roots can use both. The expression Atmanepada literally means word for oneself, whereas Parasmaipada literally means word for another. It is impossible to show this example using an English translation, so you just need to know for the time being that Upagraha Vakratā is the Vakratā related to Atmanepada and Parasmaipada forms. The next variety that we are going to see in this category is Pratyaya Vakratā. Pratyaya Vakratā is the employment of unconventional affixes to a word with a view to achieving beauty. Kundaka says that unique beauty of affix is instanced when an affix other than the ordinarily used is significantly employed with an eye to literary excellence. In fact, such significant usages do exist. Such fresh usages do contribute to the unique splendor in poetry. As we saw before, this variety also cannot be explained with the help of an English translation of the Sanskrit verse. So, I do not intend to explain this variety in great detail. All that you need to remember is that Pratyaya Vakratā is the employment of unconventional affixes to a word with a view to achieving beauty. The next variety of Vakrokti that we are going to see is Padapūrvarddha. In a poem, when particles, prefix, indeclinable, etc. are used to express a rasa, it is called Padapūrvarddha. The following is an example of Padapūrvarddha. But how will Sita fare? Ha ha ha, my dear queen, behold, I beseech thee. In this line, we have a very touching description of Rama, who is suffering from his separation from Sita. Here, ha is an indeclinable describing pain. The repeated use of the indeclinable ha adds to the emotion of grief. Here goes one more example in this regard. The face of my sweet-browed beloved, with lips covered frequently by the fingers, lovely with indistinct nose, and resting upon her shoulders, was somehow raised by me, but to kissed it could not be. Here, the hero is completely filled by the fascinating beauty of her moon face. He lifts her face with his hand, but he could not kiss it. He regrets that he could not kiss her. Here, the word but or tu in Sanskrit is very beautifully used to express his regret. So these are all the major varieties of Vakratā that we need to remember. I hope you have understood